Welcome to Finance Playbook, where we bring you exclusive audio insights from top business leaders. Grab your notebooks and get ready to learn.
All right, fantastic. Well, welcome everybody to the Financial One Day. Super excited. So, as Pastor mentioned, my name is John Prather, so I'm going to be sharing with you guys about eliminating debt, mastering debt. To give you guys a little background on me and who I am. So like I said, I'm John. Grew up in the Maryland area. I work as an engineer, but also run a successful business with my wife. And I do have a background as a former professional football player. But I'm excited. I feel like Pastor kind of gave a little bit of my talk while he was already up there. But I'm excited to share with you guys here in today's breakout session. So the first question I have for you guys is, how many people would love to do more of what you want with who you want without having to worry about finances, without having to worry about the bills that you have every single month? Okay, fantastic. So the reason why I asked that is because that's what we're going to be covering here today. How do you master debt, and how can you start building wealth starting from anywhere, no matter where you're at? If you are in debt, if you are young, old, just getting into the game, if you've already been in the game for a little while. So that's what we're going to be covering here today. So nextly, I would like to ask, how many of you guys think that you know people that have a money problem? Have you ever heard people say, I have a money problem, I'm struggling with money? Well, the reason why I said think is because money is never actually the problem that you have. Money is always the symptom to a problem. So as you saw Pastor talk about, wealth is actually very spiritual in nature. So you guys can write that down, that wealth is spiritual. And poverty is always the result of spiritual warfare. Poverty is always the result of spiritual warfare. So we're going to dive into a couple of principles that you guys can begin to apply in your finances so that you can start mastering debt and getting yourself on the track to financial wellness. Does that sound good? Yeah. So the three points that we're going to talk about, if you're taking notes, is awareness, vision, and game plan. So again, I feel like Pastor kind of touched on some of these already. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into awareness, vision, and game plan. So the first Bible verse that you guys can write down is Proverbs 22, verse 7, which states that the borrower is slave to the lender. So Pastor was talking a little bit about debt. And I'd like to give you guys a few stats about debt and finances within America. The first one is that the average American is actually in almost $100,000 plus worth of debt total, with their homes, with their student loans, with cars, and other personal loans. The average American is in over $100,000 worth of debt. So when you think about building wealth, if you're starting behind the 8 ball, it's very difficult to get to the goals that you have. Everybody, the number that people hear that talk about is, I want to be a millionaire. When I retire, I want $1 million plus in the bank. But if you start $100,000 in debt, that's like you're taking a test at school, and the second you write your name down, you already have a -10. To get an A is very difficult if you're already behind the 8 ball. So just like Pastor talked about, we want to teach you guys how you can start to master your debt. So when you become aware, the second thing is that 2/3 of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. So when you think about mastering debt and mastering your finances, if every 2 weeks you're struggling to get through the month, if you're paying your bills, paying your rent, and you don't have enough to invest for your future, it becomes very tough. So you want to ask yourself, how much debt are you in? What is my budget every single month? Do you know how much that you spend every single month? Like, what are the rent plus your groceries plus your utilities? Just like Pastor said, if you're not aware of where you're at, it's going to be difficult to get to where you want to go. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's like a GPS. If you were coming to Frederick today, but you don't know where you're going to start, how's the GPS going to help you? You got to know where you're starting so that you can go to where you want to go. And the last stat that I have for you guys here today is that 60% of Americans have less than $1,000 saved for emergencies or expenses. So that means that if you were to leave here today, the average person in Frederick, in DC, in Maryland, if they have a $1,000 car expense, or if a family member has a medical emergency, they either have to go into debt or they don't have enough money to help out their family member. And just like we talked about, wealth is spiritual. One of the things that the enemy tries to do is he tries to restrict us to focus on our lack so that you can't help other people. Because isn't that one of the things, the Great Commission to go out and make disciples of everybody else? Right. Well, if you yourself are struggling, it's going to be very difficult to help other people. So you want to first, how can I master my own finances so that I can go and help other people? And I think that's one of the things that when you incorporate that in your financial wellness, you'll be able to move forward. So there's 2 choices that you have. Once you become aware of where you're at, your budget, your debt, your finances, how much you make every single month, You have two choices, just like Pastor was talking about. You can either have an easy life on the front end and a hard life on the back end, or you can have a hard life on the front end and an easy life on the back end. So either way, you're going to have some hard, but you have to choose the hard that you want. If you live on the easy side on the front end, what does that look like? That's what most people say when they're going on all these luxury vacations. They're buying the newest car, to impress people. I remember one of my mentors said most people buy things they can't afford with money that they don't have to impress people they don't even like. So you don't want to get into that spiral of I'm trying to impress other people, because just like Pastor talked about, most of the people that you know today, you probably won't even know them in 5 years. So the money that you're spending to post these crazy pictures on Instagram and things like that, if you're not practicing the right financial habits, it's going to be tough, especially setting yourself up. So what you want to start to do is, how can you establish a game plan for the next 2 to 5 years that can put you into easy street, if that makes sense. Yeah. If you discipline yourself now, the future will be great. Like fitness is the exact same way. If you discipline yourself for the next couple of years, it's going to be very, not easy, but it'll be a lot easier as opposed to, trying to cure your sicknesses later on in life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So that goes straight into step number 2, which is vision, which again, I feel like Pastor covered perfectly about a minute or two ago. But with that, I'd like to add another Bible verse for vision, which is Habakkuk 2, verse 2. And that states that you want to write the vision and make it plain. So just like Pastor talked about, I know one of my mentors, he gave me this amazing saying, is he said, you go in the direction of your dominant thought process. So if you have a vision for your life, you're going to, if you're constantly looking at your goals and your visions, your life is going to start to go towards that. So let's say you want to become an electrician when you're in high school. Well, if you think about it every day, odds are you're going to start to take steps to become that. Let's say you want to create financial wellness. Well, if you don't focus on that day in and day out, and you focus on, just looking good, doing things that don't really practice biblical finance, you're probably going to put yourself behind the 8 ball. So what I would recommend, just like Pastor said, is pray over what is the vision for your life. Pastor said write down 5 things. I would encourage you to look back at those 5 things, write down a couple of more if some things have popped up. But I would encourage you to pray about it, either in between the sessions, after you leave here today. What is the financial vision that you have for your life? Some of you, it might be getting out of debt. For others, it might be to retire a family member. Maybe it's to set your kids up for college. I don't know what it is for you, but you want to start to identify what is that vision. And if you write down that vision every single day, you can ask my wife. I have a notepad right next to my desk, and every day I write down my vision in 4 areas of my life. The first one is faith. The second one is fitness. The third is finances. And the last is friendships. So those are the key areas in my life. So I would recommend, again, get visions. I mean, we're talking about finances today, but this applies to everything. Write down your vision. I would encourage you to have a notepad right next to your bed every night and write down your goals every night. If you write them down just before you go to bed, you're going to start thinking about it. And then God's going to be able to speak to you through your dreams and your goals and things that you have. So, definitely start thinking about your goal. And before jumping into the game plan, I want to share something with you that I learned. How many of you have heard of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Has anybody heard of that book? Okay, fantastic. So when I read that book, it really opened my eyes, because when it comes to vision, just like Pastor said, you want to start to be financially educated. And what I realized, and I'll just share a little bit now, but after the fact we can talk a little bit more, is that the main difference between the poor, the middle class, and the wealthy oftentimes isn't just the amount of money that they have. That definitely plays a part of it. But what I realized, especially after reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and if you can get your hands on it, I know there's a Barnes & Noble right at the mall right here. That book changed my perspective, because I realized that the main difference between poor and middle class people and the wealthy was the way that they think about the purpose of money. When the poor and the middle class, their mindset is that the purpose of money is to pay bills, and to spend it on things is to basically get rid of it right when you get it. And I feel like we can probably all think of people that it's like, hey, the second they get a bonus check, all right, I'm buying that new car that I want, or I'm buying those clothes, I'm going to the mall and paying for something. And when you live your life of in one hand, out the other hand, you never have any for the future. But what Robert talks about in the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad is that the wealthy, their mindset is different. Is they say once they get a hold of money, their goal is to, how can I turn this money into more money? A good phrase that you can think is like, I want this money to be like a mother that's pregnant. I want to put it into the maternity ward, and I want it to have babies. And the goal is that eventually when you get later on in life is you want to only live off of the baby money. So that way, if your expenses are covered, let's say your expenses are $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month, if you can build up an asset which is generating you $10,000 a month, now work becomes optional for you. You can work if you want to work, but you have choices. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if you start to think for the future, how can I have the money that I'm making from my job start working for me? Because we're all working hard for money. We all go to work, we all have businesses or some sort of thing. So how can you have your money work hard for you? Most people never have their money work for them. They're just working for money. So you want to see how you can switch that up. So start to get a vision for your life. What does that look like? That might be a good one for you is, how can I cover my monthly expenses with passive income? Now, it takes time. You're not going to do that in a year or two. But if you start working on it today, you'll be able to have a great future. And lastly, we can wrap up with a game plan. So first, we talked about awareness. You want to be aware of where you're at. Then you want to have a vision. And lastly, you want to have a game plan. So I know before you guys leave out, I have a brochure for you guys that kind of walks through a basic game plan that you guys can work through. If any of you guys have heard of Dave Ramsey or the Ramsey Foundation or the Ramsey Solutions, he talks a lot about the 7 baby steps. So in the brochure, it walks through those 7 baby steps. I know that's what my wife and I use to get out of debt and to start building wealth for ourselves. So that's a great foundation if you have no knowledge of where to go, how to get started. I would recommend that to start working through those baby steps 1, 2, and 3. There's a lot of other, philosophies or thought processes. So find what works best for you. I know Dave, has Christian values and he backs it up with biblical principles. So I know that's what we started with and started working towards. So yeah, and I would just say, in addition to that, you also want to have some daily and weekly habits. So once you leave here today, write down a few things. What can you do tomorrow to work towards your financial future? What can you do week to week? Maybe it's, I want to cut back on eating out. I know that was a big thing for me. I don't want to eat out 5 days a week. Can I cut it down to 2 or 3? Or whatever it is for you, try to identify 2 or 3 things that you can do every week. Because if you can identify some basic habits, it's much easier. Again, same thing with fitness. If you can get to the gym 3 days a week, you're probably going to do a workout and get into shape. So same thing with your finances, is you want to set that up. And lastly, I would recommend is to find somebody who's a coach, a mentor, an advisor who can just give you a little bit of guidance. You don't always have to go and pay somebody to give you that guidance. Sometimes it can just be maybe a YouTube mentor. Maybe you find somebody on YouTube that you really relate with that can give you some guidance. I'm actually going to give you guys some free content that you can take home today so that you can maybe find somebody that you relate with or just find somebody in life who's where you want to be. It can be financially. I know pastors are very well off and teaching a lot of this. Maybe it's somebody at your job or in your family. But find somebody who you can bounce these ideas off of, because the mindset that got you into whatever situation that you're in isn't going to be the same mindset that gets you out of it. So while you do want to take some steps to personally think about what can you do to move forward, you want to make sure that you bounce that game plan off with somebody else. Because if you just think, I'm just going to figure everything out myself, again, he who counsels himself is a fool. So find somebody who's where you want to be so that they can at least give you some guidance. They're not going to do it for you, but they can help you. So I want to offer to everybody that comes to this Financial One Day, you guys included, I want to offer a free consultation. If any of you guys want to just have a quick 15-minute Zoom call later this week, next week, I'd be happy to sit down and walk you through some of the strategies my wife and I were able to use to get out of debt in our early 20s, to buy our home, to set ourselves up for the future. So I'd be happy. My contact information is going to be on the brochures in the back, so you guys can definitely do that. So we can talk, and even if now isn't the best time, maybe in 3 to 6 months, you're like, okay, I finally settled down, new year, new me. I want to get into my financial game plan. Feel free. I'd be happy to sit down and talk. And anything that I don't have guidance on, like I'm not a certified financial planner or advisor, so I can't guide you on like investments and stuff like that, but I'm connected to many people. So I can give you guys some connection cards and things like that. But for anybody that does want to connect, we can do that. And then lastly, as we wrap up before questions, you guys can all scan this QR code. And in fact, if my wife, she wants to, you can scan this, or my wife, she's going to hand out a few of the QR codes as well. It's also going to be on the sheet. But if you scan this, all you have to do is just put in your name and your email, and I'm going to send you some free financial content. So they're going to be from Dave Ramsey, a few other pastors, just talking about how you can master your money. So feel free to scan this. It's going to be on the cards as well. So all you have to do is put in your name, your email, and your phone number. And I'm going to send you, actually, in addition to the content, I'll also send you a budget sheet. So if you want to kind of have a way to master, okay, how much money is coming in versus going out, it's all going to be there. So you just got to fill out that quick name, email, and phone number, and my team will shoot you over some content. So other than that, that's all I really have to share with you guys. I appreciate you guys listening. I'm excited for what's else.